Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is now 7:43 a.m. It's early. It's a nice, beautiful, wonderful morning. We are on location at Treadwell Coffee. Good morning, y'all. Hey, what up? Shouts out. Yeah, these live shouts. Live shouts. Y'all hear that? And we've got a great interview today. We are sitting down with my friend and brother, Nick Thompson of the city of Aurora.
How you doing?
All right. Glad we got this one going on today.
Me too.
We've got some news and highlights to talk about that are for the city of Aurora, specifically downtown. A couple other out the way initiatives, and then we'll get into our interview. First things first, a word from our sponsor. We want to say thank you to LDJ Cleaning Professionals, specializing in commercial, residential, and disinfectant cleaning, serving Aurora and the Quad Counties with over 20 years experience in the professional cleaning industry. They offer the make-ready service, post-construction cleaning, window cleaning, floor maintenance, disinfectant cleaning, and general office cleaning. The home that you worked so hard to purchase, the business that you dreamed of owning. They're honored to provide their service. Hire a true professional, call them at 630-291-5435 or visit their website, ldjcleaning.com. They help you protect your investment. All right, new statewide mitigation efforts start today, and this will be Tier 3 mitigation. There's been a new wave of COVID surging across Illinois, specifically Kane, Will, and DuPage counties, unfortunately. The governor announced the entire state will be under said mitigation. So some businesses and industries are being placed, quote, on pause, and others are still open, and that starts today. The Aurora City Council will be voting on a special use permit that would make way for a free healthcare clinic on the east side. Iglesia Carismática Jesucristo es la Verdad Church. Spanish on point today. Rolled the R's and everything. Located at 551 South 4th Street, it's being reviewed by the Aurora Christian Healthcare nonprofit as a location for their activities for uninsured clients unable to afford copay or other costs. The clinic would be next door, which used to be the 4th Street United Methodist Church. According to Aurora Christian Healthcare VP Tracy Doon, the Kane County Health Department survey recently showed that there are roughly 63,000 people in Kane County without health care. The special use permit is on the consent agenda for the council meeting on the 24th, meaning that it is likely to pass. All right. The 22nd, Sunday, there's going to be a drive-through turkey giveaway. We've been telling y'all about this since literally last week. It's been on the gram and the face bizzle as well. Now, Headliners Barbershop, Endless Possibilities Auto, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Fitness in Naperville, and the Reyna family are coming together to give back to the community during these hard times. Many families have been struggling due to the pandemic, and these type of initiatives go a long way. So shout out to all the businesses that are involved, and the initiative is called 100 Turkeys for 100 Families. Mayoral candidates have filed the maximum number of signatures to get on the April 6th ballot. There's 2 candidates running against our incumbent mayor, Richard Irvin. They are Mr. Judd Lofshe and Mr. John Leish. Good luck to everyone. And ARTA, the Aurora Area Retired Teachers Association, is having their second drive-through box dinner sale from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and that's going to be on December 1st at Gaslight Manor. The public is invited. The cost is $20. Reservations are required. Deadline for reservations is Friday, November 20th. Oh, that's today, y'all. Damn. We've been telling y'all about that for like 2 weeks now, so y'all gotta get on that. That's tell you the menu items one more time. On the menu, the entree items are Greek chicken, roast pork, fettuccine alfredo. Side dishes included are roasted potatoes, green beans, and dessert. ARTA is a local nonprofit started in 1958. And let me see here. Downtown Aurora's Cocoa Crawl, annual Cocoa Crawl, is without the crawl this year due to COVID-19. Cocoa Crawl mugs are being sold at different places in downtown Aurora, along with hot cocoa recipe cards. And those are going to be at different businesses downtown. So you can definitely check those out, get your cocoa on, and yeah, drink that, take that. All right. And the weather today, the current temperature is 48 degrees. It's nice outside. The high today will be 57 degrees, and that looks to be reached at about noon. The sound you're hearing is dishes being washed, clean. Can you feel the effervescence? It's the word of the day, effervescence. All right. Saturday's going to be 45 degrees. Sunday 45 degrees as well. Okay. And last but not least, I wanted to take a brief moment to give a couple of shout outs. I want to give a shout out to AmVets Post 103, which is located 1194 Jericho Road next to the Aurora Food Pantry. They've got their Chicago style hot dog open to the public eatery today. So please check them out at 11:30 a.m. Shout out to AmVets. I want to say shout out to the American Legion as well. And I want to tell you guys, oh, that's right. Holy cow. I almost forgot to tell y'all that there is going to be another senior meal distribution. I would be remiss if I did not tell you that on Monday, December 7th at 1200 East Indian Trail Road, our representatives of state, Barbara Hernandez of the 83rd District and Stephanie Kifowit of the 84th District, respectively, are going to be hosting another meal distribution for seniors. Kane County seniors 60 years of age or older are eligible for 5 frozen meals. You must call to register. Registration closes Friday, December 4th at noon. All right. And for more information, call 630-338-0999. All right. And that's all the news for today on this beautiful Friday. So now we get into our interview with our brother, our man, right close to this, our friend, Nick. Good to see you, my man.
Likewise, brother. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good morning. So we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but the conversation is going to take perhaps a couple of narratives. We'll be talking about social justice.
Okay.
We'll also be talking about the state of African Americans countrywide and also in Aurora.
Okay.
But also what we like to do is get to know you more.
For sure.
For the folks. So starting off, I just said your name, but please tell us who you are and where you're from.
Sure. My name is Nicholas Richard Thompson. I am from Aurora, Illinois. I was born and raised here. I moved around a little bit to other suburbs, but the majority of my life has been spent in Aurora.
Okay. And this is usually the point in the interview where most people will shout their side. So what side?
East side, forever.
All right. The Tomcat side.
Yeah.
Okay. People came on here capping yesterday for the Blackhawks, so it was interesting to see.
We don't do that, no.
All right. We're on location at Treadwell, so the pausing is for coffee, y'all, but we have to have that. Growing up, what impact did your mom have in your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think a huge impact. My mom is my best friend. You know, I'm a mama boy to this day, right? And seeing her, and my parents separated, mind you, when I was in 6th grade. No, 5th grade actually, right? So my mom, seeing her struggle and seeing her work so hard and always barely making the rent, always, sometimes not having food, things like that. But always seeing how optimistic she was and how willing she was to help other people, right? So I had, aunts, uncles, cousins, and they would come stay with us, or she would help people down when they were down on their luck, facing, economic distress. And that, I think, had an impact on me, indirectly and directly, me not even noticing. And just her encouragement is like all I need to keep going. I know, I wasn't always really, I didn't do very well academically in high school. People are surprised when I tell them that. But when I graduated, my mom was so supportive of me and anything I wanted to do. And she essentially signed me up for, FAFA, Bonzi Community College, where I think was a very pivotal move for me and seeing the value of education and self-education beyond that. And she's never given up on me at any time. And now, anything I do, she's my biggest hyper. So I would say she's probably the most influential person in my life.
And what's your post-high school education?
I got my associates, I got my undergrad, and I'm pursuing my master's currently. I'll be done in May.
All right, good. Hurry up, May. Come on, let's get here.
Right?
You work for the city of Aurora.
I do.
Where you go?
I'm a communications coordinator, and I run the public access TV station.
Okay.
So essentially what that is, public access TV station is a resource to the community to come in and you can stream content on there. And historically what it was for people to come in and get, lessons on video production. You can come in and, stream your content that you've produced. And it was kind of this place, most people know Aurora for what? Wayne's World, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that, and that's, you know what I'm saying? So, and I also work adjacent to the mayor's office on different special projects. So whether it's event organizing, press releases, or liaising between different departments and things like that, whatever kind of comes up. When I got the job initially, I was just purely doing the internal operations for the public access TV station. But then I think soon they saw I had other skill sets, and I'm kind of I'm a go-getter. If you ask me to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I don't know how to do it, I'll look it up. Google's free, right?
Right.
So I rarely say no. And I think if you ask anybody I've worked with, Nick doesn't say no to anything, and that might be my downfall. But I say yes to a lot of things because I'm passionate about the city that I'm from and the causes that I support. So through that, it developed, and I've been granted the opportunity to do a little bit more with the city, and I feel fortunate for that. So.
And how long you been with the city?
It's strange. It's been 3 years now. It does not seem like that.
It seems longer for some reason.
Well, I interned
to me, and that's
maybe, but yeah,
not my job.
Not my job. No, for sure. 3 years, I guess, seems super long to me because it happened so quickly. A lot of people don't know this, so I'll share a little story, an intimate one. The day I actually officially got hired, my dad had died about 4 hours ago at the hospital. It was like 4 a.m. My dad had passed away. He had been, unconscious for some time, and then me, my sisters, and my siblings had made the decision to pull the plug. And I had the interview that morning. The interview had already been previously rescheduled. And again, I'm a person that I guess I'm always trying to, I don't like to make excuses, Of course I was in, I guess, a disheveled mental state, but I was strong enough to show up. So I go and I show up, and the situation comes out because I'm not myself, and they're like, "Why did you come?" I was like, "Well, this was how I was supposed to come." So, strangely enough, after that, I just kind of threw myself into the work, and then I was already working I'm a screenwriter and producer for the Media Production Digital Alliance, and we do commercials, we do narrative-based screenwriting, we've done corporate videos and things of that nature. So I was already kind of working, and then once I got the city job, losing my father, I kind of just threw myself into the work, to be honest with you. So all of a sudden, I look up now, I'm 26. And I'm like, oh, it's been 3 years, huh? I mean, wow. So, yeah.
What's Aurora's biggest strength?
I would say resilience and diversity. So I'm sorry if that's two, but resilience and diversity.
Okay.
And you want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. So resilience, I think most people, when you first meet them, if they are not from Aurora, they know, the myths about it, right? I know there were, not the myths, but, the old images of it, right? So a lot of people know about the height of violence in the 90s and early 2000s. But I think it's been incredibly resilient in the sense that it's bounced back from that in a way, and it's reinventing itself. And I think it's still in that process. I don't think you're ever done really building, but it's still in that process of reinventing itself from some of those previous stigmas it had. And then when I think about diversity, I think there's a great unity here, and it's not always apparent, but when I think there are moments that are backed against the wall and things like that, Aurora comes and shows out. When I come to Aurora, at least from my experience, I see a great deal of diverse culture, peoples, and there's a merging of it and a collaboration of it. I'm part of different advocacy groups that deal with different issues that, quite frankly, are aligned. I believe in strong solidarity, but I love to see the strength of people coming together for similar causes and different backgrounds to unite around commonality. So I think I see that in Aurora.
I've heard Aurora described as the little city that could. Do you think that's a fair description?
Little city that could. That's interesting. I kind of like that. I think some people would take that and say, oh, that's, there's a chip on our shoulder because the word little. But I don't think that has a negative connotation. In comparison, we are smaller to Chicago, the largest city, but we are the second largest city in Illinois.
Right.
And I think that's important to highlight. So if you're comparing it to that, we are smaller, but we do, I think, large things. We have a large capacity, and I think it's growing the potential. You look at the downtown area, you can look at, the Paramount, and knowing, the data around the Paramount is one of the largest theaters, in the nation.
Yeah.
that's something a lot of people don't know. Knowing like the history of Aurora, and like this is one of the first, you know, industrialized cities to have street lights. That's where the name City of Aurora comes from.
Right, the City of Lights.
Yeah. Historically, it's always, I think, done large things, had a large capacity, and it's done it on, you know, on large scale with less resources, less people, but it's still able to achieve things that you might not otherwise think you can. So I think that's an accurate description. I don't think it's a bad thing.
Okay. In your history being an Aurora resident,
For sure.
what is, in your opinion, what's the biggest change that you've seen take place? I'm going to say that in kind of open-ended fashion because, you know, I don't want to stick with just an administrative aspect or a cultural aspect or an architectural aspect, you know.
I think for me, and this might be for various reasons, but I think for me there have been more community, grassroots, civic efforts to engage, cultivate culture. So not just engage politically, but like cultivate culture, you know, as, you know, cultural destination and hub spots. I think the art scene has been brimming. I think it's been welcoming and growing. And I think more communication is being done between silos, and I think that, you know, brings about more of that diversity we just spoke about earlier. So I think that has been the biggest change.
Silos. I like that. And I'm familiar with the context in which you use it. You know, those places where the mentality and the thinking process is just one silo of, you know, breaking through that. That's what you mean, right?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. And I guess I'll use an example. So I know my organizing efforts, I'm all over the place, right? I got, you know, brothers and friends and, you know, people who I organize with who have records, right? I know people who are deeply into the church. You know, I know people who are in the corporate world, right? So, and they're all my brothers, right? And, you know, I've seen the cross-mingling of that, whereas previously I don't know if that took place. So that's what I mean by silos. I'm seeing a cross-mingling of just seeing the humanity in people and seeing that we share a lot more in common than we differ.
What does America mean to you?
You don't want to know that, I'm So, my mom probably would get mad at me saying it. So, America means to me, I think it has incredible potential if it ever lived up to its values and principles that it claims. So,
looks good on paper.
Oh, theory. On paper, it looks great. You know, this melting pot, this place of land and opportunity. Data doesn't show that. History doesn't show that. You know, it's very ahistorical to sit here and pretend that America has been this place of opportunity and freedom and liberty when that's not the case, right? When I think of America in its current state, this is not what I'm saying what it could be, but its current state, it's still a colonial settlement with occupied people within it, whether you're talking about natives or black people, right? And I say that because when you look at the historical development from chattel slavery, which changed into the convict leasing system, which by historian account was much more cruel than chattel slavery. Mm-hmm. And then you go from convict leasing to black codes to Jim Crow. And then outside of Jim Crow, you start having the 50s and 60s, you see these large movements. You have the counterintelligence program by the FBI, a state-sanctioned supported program that infiltrated, murdered, would falsely imprison there's political prisoners still in jail for this program under J. Edgar Hoover, of the FBI director. What they identified as black seditious groups, right? Identifying Malcolm, Martin, wiretapping, discrediting them to undermine and subvert their movements. This happened in the 60s and throughout the 70s and early 80s. That, you're not a citizen. Now, you might be a citizen on paper, but they just violated all your rights, your constitutional rights, for a 3-year decade. And then prior to that, you were enslaved, right? So when people oftentimes say, well, slavery was a long time ago. Well, the state violence hasn't stopped, right? And that was in the 80s. I can get to the 90s. Now, what happened in the 90s? Crime bill. And in the 70s, we did the drug war. So for me, there hasn't been a modicum of effort or a year or 10-year or 1-year respite of not violence on black and dark-skinned colonized people. There just hasn't. This is historic. I mean, you can't argue with empirical evidence, right? I mean, so when we get to the 2000s, we also see still violence upon black people.
Right.
We see with predatory loans and the new revised way of redlining. I think that's another thing. So even in the early 2010s, we still see violence against, colonized black and native people. And I think sometimes people see a black president, and that gave them a false sense of progression, that we had went to a post-racist society. But it was just more covert. And, so for me, it's hard to ever say that it is ever lived up to its principles when it has not for many people. And I recognize black people, natives, that still occupy colonized people in a neo-colonial sense.
On that note, the opportunity that America has to live up to those ideals and become those ideals, the on-paper version for all citizens, is that feasible?
I'll say yes. I'm a revolutionary optimism. I'll say yes. Because I think there is a rising consciousness of people who realize there is a lot of work to be done. There's a great book, and now we're going to get to talking about books. But
we are. Yes.
American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, A History of Fake News. A History of Fake News, right? And there's been a long historical culmination of false narratives about black people, natives, and poor people in general, and a lot of immigrants as well.
Sure.
In a way to oftentimes divide working class, crush labor movements, to scapegoat people for economic failures on these groups of people. Like I think we've seen it most recently, and it's been done before. Immigrants are taking jobs, right? We've heard that. One, this isn't true. Right? Any economist will tell you that oftentimes immigrant labor fills gaps in the labor market, which strengthen economies.
Right.
Outside of that, no one can take a job. Your job is given away by a capitalist who decides he wants to maximize profit by reducing wages. So oftentimes the poor are pit against the poor while the capitalist escapes, and it's never ever criticized, right? So those are other things that when we think about. But what was the question?
The question was,
is it viable?
Yeah. Is it feasible? Could it even happen that America could live up to those notions, and citizens would feel that
as a part of the citizen?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's possible. And like I said, a revolutionary optimism, and we have a rising consciousness. I think the youth, and my nieces, my nephews, my generation itself, I think is very powerful, very radical. And then, which I think we have radical circumstances, so you would need radical change to get that. That's why I say that. And I think the generation before me have no commitments to the myths that America had imposed, right? They don't really. Go ahead.
No, don't mind me. Keep going.
Okay,
keep
cool.
going. Yeah.
No. So the incoming generation, I think they're called Gen Z, Zoomers. A lot of them, when I meet them, when I'm organizing, they are disillusioned with the American system, right? They don't fall for some of the Cold War propaganda. They're not interested in the tradition for tradition's sake. They are really, really open-minded and destroying the binary. They see sexuality, gender on a spectrum, which mind you, like a lot of gender binary was imposed through colonization. Like Pre-Colonial Africa is a good book, and it's called Being and Becoming, and it's a collection of essays by people in the diaspora and people in the continent of Africa talking about gender and sexuality and gender roles even. Right. And how those got perverted through colonization. So, I go off on a lot of tangents, but essentially, I do see it as feasible, but it'll take work. It won't just happen spontaneously. It's going to take organizing. It's going to take political consciousness. It's going to take unity. It's going to take solidarity. And I think the upcoming generations have more of that and are ready to take on the cause.
What's the state of African Americans in Aurora?
In Aurora, interesting. Okay, so depending who you ask, I think last time I checked, the population here was about 12%, right?
Right.
So when I was discussing with some of the county sheriffs, the 4 counties, disproportionately it is African Americans, but we are the lowest number. But this is a national issue. This is a national issue of inequality and inequities throughout the nation. It's not unique to Aurora, mind you, but it is something that I think is disproportionately plaguing black men in particular. And unfortunately, this is something that can only be fixed through, I think, there's been a lot of policy and underdevelopment of communities. It's going to take a time to build up communities, build up people back up so they can be prosperous and have self-determination and be empowered. I think we have a large connected black community, or it's growing connected. I see people like Po Bump Society. I see grassroots. What's up?
Shouts.
Yeah, shout out to those brothers. I see grassroots efforts by like ECHO. I think the People's Coalition of newly forming a federation that's going to be primarily focused on black causes, but extending solidarity to all social justice issues. I think those are good. I think you need grassroots efforts to advocate and to serve the interests of different populations of people while maintaining solidarity. So I think the state it could always be better. You don't ever like to look at the numbers of disproportionate people in prison, disproportionate people unhoused, things like that. When you are the a shorter number of the total population, but in all the wretched conditions, you're the highest, right? That's not coincidental.
To be 12% of the population and 80% of the prison system.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
These are the things we want to address. So, but I think there's always room for improvement. Again, this is a national issue. This isn't unique to Aurora. Anywhere you go in the nation, you'll see that recidivism rates of 70%. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
What does the word strength mean to you?
I think the word strength could mean a lot of things, but most importantly, at its core, it is, again, I think resilience. So sometimes people will associate strength just with power, but I think mental fortitude is a strength, right? You know, I think a strength is the asset that you have that is sharpened and is something that isn't easily defeated or taken away. You know, it's getting kind of abstract, but that's what I see as a strength, an asset that can't be easily defeated or taken away. So,
who are some of your favorite black leaders? And this can be historical.
Yeah, okay.
Hold on. We'll wait for that blender.
You got the blender, you know what I'm saying? So for sure, I think first and foremost, Angela Davis, former Black Panther member, part of the Communist Party, a prison abolitionist, you know, a scholar. She's been very impactful for me, her work. Malcolm X. He's one of the first books I actually finished, and that actually I could say had an impact where like I was like, whoa, right? So,
Eyes open.
Eyes open. So beyond there, that began, I think, my political maturation from reading Malcolm X and seeing his development. Because his whole life, when you look at Malcolm X, it's all transformation. You know, he went from Detroit Red from Malcolm Little to Detroit Red to Malcolm X, finally dropping the name when he was at NOI, left the NOI, became El Haj Shabazz, and then he went to Africa. A lot of people don't know about it. He got another name, Omawali, right? Which means, I think, in one of the languages, I think one say Swahili, meaning to a child has returned. Mm-hmm. So his whole life was transformation. He came back, he had Pan-African sensibilities. Thomas Sankara, a lot of people don't know about Thomas Sankara. He was a revolutionary that led a revolt in Burkina Faso, who was previously the Voting people. The Voting people were under French colonial rule, and in '83 he led a revolution. And in 4 years, he was assassinated in a coup, backed of course by American officials. And what he did in 4 years was he reduced or increased the literacy rate. He had a mass immunization, so people were dying in this country for very simple things that you won't die in industrialized countries, but he immunized all the children. He gave back the land to the peasants so they can cultivate it. He was able to, he took all the fleets of all the cars from the previous administration that were being funded by the French government to do what they wanted. He took all of that and cut everybody's salary. He wouldn't allow people in the government to have like basic necessities. And he said this, he said, if the people are suffering, we will suffer with them until we are at a stage of development that no one has to. Like, he had a very interesting mindset of, if we serve the people. He really meant to serve the people. I don't think there's a leader in history who's done as much as him in a short time and had such a righteous love of the forsaken, the forgotten, and the wretched of the earth. There's so many things I can go about. Like, I can think he was working. There's a long list of what he accomplished in 4 years before he was assassinated, and it's just no short of just amazing and remarkable. So Thomas Sankara, to Angela Davis, Malcolm X, and then I think I'll end on Elevator, because she was someone who said that she wanted to walk among the people and not lead them. She didn't like the concept of the charismatic leader. She was very critical of Martin at times. That she said, the movement made Martin. Martin didn't make the movement. And sometimes we forget that, and we put leaders in front of things when it's mass movements of people who create change within society. So Elevator humbles me to say, we are not leaders, we walk among other leaders. We can empower people, but we're not out here like some charismatic, I'm the only one who has I'm the oracle. No, we are, among the people. I think that is really powerful in organizing, to remind yourself of that. Because sometimes people get away with the ego and human nature to get away with it. So she humbles me. Malcolm empowers me. Thomas Sankara inspires me, and Angela Davis just sets me right.
I've always been interested because I do believe that with the mindset and the knowledge that we consume, we also consume the arts, specifically music. What do you listen to?
I listen to a very diverse range of music. It depends what I'm doing. So when I'm reading, I actually have a playlist set, and it's a bunch of orchestra music, it's lyricless music, it's piano-based, things like that. When I'm running, it's like punk rock, hip-hop, even metal. If I'm like, having a day at the beach, I'm chilling. You know what I'm saying? It'll be no more R&B, poppy tunes. So
Yeah,
like,
Steve Nas, the Esco part.
I love dance tunes. I got a whole playlist I share with you of dance tunes, but that are politically conscious. You know what I'm saying? And I play the dance thing. I name all my playlists. I'm always proud of my name. And if they're really bouncy, I got some Pharrell on there. I got a lot of artists on there who are talking about social justice issues and political consciousness, and a dance like Caribbean vibe, with like all types of stuff. So yeah, we're pushing on with it.
Okay, all right, yeah. We're gonna get into books here momentarily too, but one thing that I like is that you display your the things that you like. Like you let the be known. You'll post the books you're listening, or that you're reading and things like that. Like I like how you've been vocal and outspoken with the stuff that you consume. Because I think like knowledge is power, man, and and the autobiography of Malcolm X is, I mean, I'll be on record to say, like, I think that should be standard reading for African American kids at least.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, it'll change your life.
And you know what's funny? I always make a joke
life.
about Malcolm X. Like, his political analysis can be applied to today, right? He talks about lesser evil voting. He talks about, we're not outnumbered, or we're outnumbered. We're not outnumbered. We're out-organized. He talks about a lot of the things that we suffer from today about the capitalist system. He discussed in the early 60s. And he said, this is what you'll be dealing with. And sometimes it's eerie reading him, especially some of his previous speeches that don't get as popularized. And I'm like, he knew, he understood.
Yeah, and if you read the book, he's talking about like the Kennedy administration, which is an administration that was not that long ago. It's in the scheme of things. I mean, the city on the city site posted the pictures of Kennedy here in Aurora.
Exactly.
So that's history that you could, not literally, but you could touch. It's still very relevant history.
Yeah.
The time is now 8:15 a.m. and you are listening and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast, and we are joined by our friend and brother, Nick Thompson. All right, books. Let's get into books. We've discussed 3 titles already: Manufacturing Consent, the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then the one that you mentioned about colonialism.
Oh, American Exceptionalism, American Innocence.
Okay, yeah.
A history of fake news. Really powerful book. I think everybody should read it.
What's another powerful book?
Let me see. So, depending on what you want to jump into, we can do economics, we can do philosophy, political science.
What was the book you were reading when I walked in?
Oh, The End of Policing.
That looked good.
By my brother, Alex S. Vitelli.
Okay. What's it about? The title sounds easy. It's simple enough, but...
Sure. So he goes through the fact that these reforms that are oftentimes popularized by liberals, and then the arguments made by conservatives around policing in particular, of why they fall flat and why we still have this issue of mass incarceration. And he talks about the end of policing. He said it's not the lack of diversity, it's not the training, it's not the procedures, it's not the protocol. He said it's policing itself,
right? The
expansion of it and the role they play in society. He goes through how houselessness is criminalized. He goes through the school to prison pipeline with SOO officers, and he uses empirical data. And let me share some things with you that I think are eye-opening. Not only is using police to deal with a lot of these issues immoral, it's actually fiscally irresponsible. So there was like 4 studies, and one of them looked at 800 people in and out of the criminal justice system and also receiving health care. And it cost about, within 3 years, $137 million. The study showed that if they had just given these people housing and the services before, up front, it was at 43% less.
Right.
You save money. So that was one study. He had another one where he looked at, per person, what they were spending on houseless people, on their services, and like, instead of just solving the problem at the root, with policing and putting them through the court system and all these other fines and fees, what they saw was, per person, this city, New York, was spending $18,000 per person. Whereas if you were to just put housing first, it's $11,000, right? And he has an entire chapter on it. These are just 2 of the ones that come to mind. There's an entire chapter on how fiscally irresponsible it is to do policing as we have. He looks at how policing in schools came to be after the tragic Columbine shooting. That's really what brought them into schools. But there is no empirical evidence suggesting that they improve the school experience. So why are they there? And then when you look at the data, he shows that there are significant length of nurses, social workers, and mental health professionals in schools, but they have contracts with police agencies. He's saying, again, morally objectify this, but also fiscally responsible, right? So it's funny, conservatives like to pride themselves on being fiscally responsible. If you were, you'd actually be a part of the changing the police movement, but you're not. So I would reevaluate your politics, right? The same thing for, I think, liberals, because he talks about both. He's very measured in this. He said it's not a liberal conservative problem. Both of them are offering solutions that won't lead to the desired outcomes that we have of public safety. You know, they're not deterring crime. The prison industrial complex doesn't rehabilitate, and it's not ensuring public safety. So that's kind of his whole premise, and he gets into a lot of other things too. But it's a good book, and it's really accessible, so it's not bogged down in academic language. He talks about the issue, and then the next chapter he'll talk about how to improve it, and then it takes that kind of passage all the way through.
What is qualified immunity?
Qualified immunity. So, basic terms, what it is so public servants can kind of escape responsibility if something were to happen on the job, and they say they were to, example, excessive force, or there was a story where somebody came in, they're on the job, they shot somebody's dog. They were free from civil suit. So qualified immunity makes sure it protects them. Even if they make a mistake where normal people could be subject to a civil suit, they are not.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of protesters, a lot of activists nationwide are calling for the end of qualified immunity so that police can be held accountable. That's one step
right.
to it, but I think it's a big thing.
No, I believe that I think it's the most evil thing since Elvira. I mean, I think it's I do. I mean, instead of defunding the police, I'd rather yank qualified immunity. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I really think that qualified immunity is the bread with which the sandwich of injustice is made. I mean, it all starts right there. I mean, the idea that you could choke a guy out, he dies, and then you could plausibly legally represent yourself with the excuse that you didn't know that his choking would be violating his civil rights. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Now,
and real quickly, can I make
sure?
Something
Yeah.
real quick? Because you said something, and I think I want people to look into this. So there's a concept. My organization, Black Alliance for Peace, supports this movement, and it's called community control of the police. So it's different than defunding. It's different than abolishing. What it does is it creates democratic control of the police. So you have a say in the funding, procedures, practices, hiring, firing, and their budget. So in theory, it's an elected board of the community. And if the police department is engaging the community in, I think, meaningful ways, then there will be a relationship there. And I think this is how you build a relationship, because there's no relationship currently, especially with poor community of color. It's just not there. This, I think, would empower people. It would make them more civically engaged, and it would start building that relationship. To say, we have not just an oversight board, but we have a working relationship in how we're funding. Why do you need to? And essentially, you control how you're going to be policed, in a sense. And I think if you're for democracy, I don't know why people would be opposed to that. And if the police department is good, well, mind you, I think the issue is structure. I don't think it's good and bad cops. It's structure that's at the root. But if you are for democracy and you believe that your community is, your community officers are good, well then they should have nothing to worry about community control, because that would, I think, be shown and emphasized through the relationship that's built through community control of the police.
To my knowledge, Aurora hasn't had a Ferguson incident. And I'm talking just on scale of,
For sure.
Absolute disreputable, egregious, violence against a person. So we acknowledge policing and its wrongs, but it would be a fair assessment that compared to other police departments in America, Chicago, Aurora is certainly nowhere near the scale of violence and abuses against citizens. Is that a fair assessment?
I think I would say so. I think what I look at as Ferguson is actually a unique and an interesting example. So in 2010, grassroots organizations actually appealed to the DOJ and the state's attorney for excessive police violence against the community. This is 4 years before the Mike Brown lynching.
Right.
Right. Nothing happens, of course. 4 years later, Mike Brown is, brutally murdered by the police. And they now investigate. And what they find by 2015 comes out, the case is released. And they found that there had been an 80% increase from, I think, 08 to 10. And then it kept increasing of the fines, fees, and forfeitures that were taking place from the police department. And the main fiscal for the city, resource was coming from police fines and forfeitures.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that study. That's an excellent reference right there. Yes, that's right. It showed basically for the listener, what it showed was that Ferguson was funding itself on many levels, administration, city bureaucracy, through the subjugation, fines, fees, towing your car. Now you got to pay to get all of it. Court costs, bonds, all of it. It was, it was disgraceful.
For sure. So I highlight that because that's the key contradiction. There's a profit incentive to keep prisons filled. There's a profit incentive to do bogus ticketing, fines, and fees. So even the best police departments are oftentimes locked into this responsibility.
Sure.
They have become tools of social control and revenue generation. Now, this isn't saying that your neighbor next door was a cop is on some evil scheme. Most people they're good people. I'm saying how policing is structured in a system that's profit-driven capitalism. This is almost inescapable of kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy and police perpetuating the need for themselves through funding mechanisms, perpetuating violence and things of that nature. So when you these underserved communities, you take out the social capital, you send them to jail, kids grow up without parents, so on and so forth, and actually creating a cycle of facilitating crime to take place.
Well, hold on, Nick. Why can't they just pull themselves up by the bootstraps? More black people get shot by black people in the ghetto. But hold on, Nick, because
so there's the Southern Law Institute, and they did a study on blocking black crime, and they debunked it, right? There's the myth of black. First two things I want to talk about black crime. One, blocking black crime. Let's say it was real. I grant you that. It doesn't justify the brutality by the state on citizens.
Completely different conversation.
Exactly. So your argument's already very fallacious, right, and it's very disingenuous. Right. Secondly, it is debunked. And this idea that black people are what it does is perpetuate the idea that black people are inherently violent.
Right.
And goes back to race science, which is what is used to justify slavery. So I'd be very careful using that language because from that language, that's white supremacy reality. Correct. There's no way around that. That's white supremacy reality.
That wasn't me with that. That was.
Oh no, I know what you did. So we can talk about it. Nah.
Maybe if you're real unofficial on my own show, man, like that.
Nah, bro.
No, I'm just playing, bro.
And it reminds me of another book for listeners. Two books I want to recommend.
Yeah.
The so-called Bootstraps argument gets demolished. One is called How Capitalism Has Underdeveloped the Black Community, and the other one is The Myth of Black Buying Power by Jared Ball.
I'm familiar with that title.
Two incredible books. Again, I'm always really, really driven by citations. So I look at people's citations when I read and where they're getting the data from. It's all data driven, it's all empirical. Take your pick and listen to these arguments of why this idea of the free market has never been, the so-called free market, has never been accessible for the vast majority of poor, black, working class, and again, colonized people. It hasn't been. Right? I think the data that I looked at most recently, black people by 2040 are going to have a negative net wealth combined. Mm-hmm. That the free market's not working for you. Nor did it work for most working class people, mind you. It's not just black people. So,
right.
But black people are especially marginalized, as well as other people, immigrants, native people, have a special degree of violence and inequality expressed upon them.
How has COVID impacted your life?
I think it's made me pivot and take a step back, pause. I've been doing my master's during COVID, so there's been pros and cons to it, actually, really. But just trying to stay healthy. I have a mom, and I talked about it earlier. My best friend, with a lot of underlying health ailments. So it's been imperative for me to try to keep her safe. Like the first 3 months, didn't help her. I would come in by a mask, drop off groceries, and, things like that. So it wasn't really, I'm close with my mom, so not to be able to have that closeness and intimacy was difficult for her even, and me and myself. So making sure my family's safe. Luckily, no one in my immediate family has caught it yet, and everybody has been pretty healthy. Economically, there's been some distress for some of my people, but for the most part, people are taking care of each other.
I heard you have 235 unused stars here at Treadwell.
How did you find that out?
Second largest city's first daily news podcast got all the news, brother. Come on, man. We got mad resources.
Yeah, that is. I think it's more now. I'm not gonna lie to you. That is true. That is very true.
Using stars, man. They got good drinks, man. They, get you like just getting your stuff. I know how you do, man. You come, you get your stuff, you read your book, you out.
Yeah.
Have your meeting here if you're having a meeting here, and just keep it moving. Yeah.
When COVID's over, how about this? I'll drinks on me. Come on. COVID's officially when it's really safe and we open back up and we're comfortable. I'm gonna ball out for the community. We gonna get free drinks. And I think that's about 20 drinks, brother. That's about 20 drinks. That's 20 people. That's a whole party.
That is.
Let's do it. Hope Chad's okay with that.
So, and before we end the interview, I would like you to take a moment to talk about what you think Aurora, or what you'd like to see in Aurora in the next 5, 10 years and things like that. I want to plant the flag in the conversation though and say that you are working with Goldfinch Cafe.
I am.
Which the initiative of a pay what you can food truck, I think is a fantastic and honorable goal. I really like to see that happen and take place. So congratulations. So since you're part of, I'm asking you this because you're literally part of change. So it's part what you want to see, but also what are you working towards?
For sure. So, tell you 3 pillars. I think one thing I'm seeing is more young, really intelligent, audacious people running for office. I want to see more of that.
Word up.
Shout out to Sandra Gonzalez, Giselle Gonzalez.
Word.
They're running, for the Wabandi Community College trustees. I want to see more of that. Right? Anybody that knows me, I'm very skeptical of the federal government. We're free. I have my citations. That change is going to be very difficult there. But on the municipal level, there is key opportunity to change your material conditions and really improve people's lives on the municipal level. Mm-hmm. So I want to see more people running for office. I want to see the concept of mutual aid broadened. Real quick, mutual aid is a reciprocal voluntary exchange of resources because we recognize the responsibility to ourselves. So take care of your neighbors. You know what I'm saying? Organizations like ECHO, Point to Point, Kane County, are extending mutual aid to some of the unhoused people and other people struggling with bills. And I want to see that become a norm, right? A mutual aid fund, something like that could be citywide, that we recognize that when other people are taken care of, this is better for everybody. And that we see these struggles that are common to us all, and that could be uprooted and changed through, I think, maximum effort of people just recognizing the humanity in each other. So I want to see mutual aid be a concept that people adopt. Because people always talk about community. I love community. Mutual aid is community in action. Community is a verb. You got love for people like I do, right? You know what I'm saying? There's this quote. It's funny. It's by this liberatory theologian, revolutionary and Catholic priest. He said, when I feed the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist.
Calvin?
What's up?
Calvin? Was it Calvin who said that?
No. His name is Marcio Rosio.
Okay.
He's a Catholic priest, and he said, when I feed the poor, they call me a saint, and when I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist, right? And I think that's very interesting to highlight. So oftentimes people don't feel comfortable with inequality or injustice, but then when we try to make changes, I think they are stifled or opposed because of silly nonsense that are strong, right? Misrepresentation of people's arguments, right? To better refute it. And I see that so often, and it's not genuine political discourse or dialogue, right? Most people want community safety, right? No one wants, so when people are saying they want community control or defunding the police, they're not saying they want chaos.
Right.
It's represented as that, but it's not, right? Most people want people taken care of, right? I think generally, most people we talk to, they want their community to be safe, prosperous. It's just about how we go about it. And I think we have to be more open and honest to have conversations, and they're more conducive to change. So I want to see mutual aid expanded. I want to see young people run for office, and I want to see the goldfinch come to fruition. And I want to, I hopefully encourage more people to get civically engaged in any way. Join an organization that aligns with your values and your beliefs, and start doing little work. And be very surprised of how much you can change in your direct surroundings, in your direct neighborhood, in your direct community or district, just by getting 10, 20 people together. You'd be very surprised how much you can change. So I'm really big on localizing the issues and municipalism.
The show ends on a positive note.
For sure.
What is your message today to the people of Aurora going into the weekend?
For sure. Outside of COVID, of masking up and being safe, what I would say is, love your neighbors, love your family. I think we just got out of a very politically contentious, presidential election and elections down ballot. We won't connect with everybody, but you should strive to always lead with revolutionary love and radical empathy to try to understand, right? I've organized and helped with people who we are diametrically opposed, but I care about their humanity despite. That's the bare level of their human being, and we want to make sure people are taken care of. And then through that, I've had people be converted and be like, Nick, that stuff you're talking about? That's right. We want to see the world like that. How you do? My politics are emotion. I believe my politics are, my behaviors are not acceptable to it. So I try to lead I try to lead my life driven by my political philosophy, and not just talk and theorize about it, but read it out and try to genuinely do it. So I hope what I want to tell people is be safe, love your neighbor, get to know your neighbor if you don't know them, cherish the family, the people you have. We just got a very contentious place. Let's try to, genuinely heal and work towards that, because it's not just going to happen by itself.
On behalf of the second largest city's first daily news podcast, we want to say thank you for sitting down with us today and talking to us and chopping it up.
Absolutely.
This is a great conversation. Great conversation.
Thank you for what? I appreciate you. I love the work you're doing.
Thank you, man. I wish you much success in everything you do, because everything you're doing is helping Aurora. So I appreciate it, man.
I hope it is.
Hold on. Come to Treadwell for your drinks. They're making them right now. You can hear that in the background, y'all. Live fresh drinks. That's the matcha. Or I don't know what it is, actually. Be blessed, be safe, be strong this weekend for everybody. Headliners Barbershop, 100 Turkey for a 100 Family giveaway. Big initiatives going on in the city. Does Goldfinch have anything coming up?
We're working on a couple events. We're actually sending out holiday cards just to show our appreciation for different people, and we're going to be working on some secret things, trying to do some online virtual events, trying to pivot so people can remain safe, but we can still want to fundraise.
Be engaged.
Got some new things in the works, so exciting. It's exciting.
Okay. All right. Everybody be safe, be healthy out there, wear your mask, and we will see you guys here Monday for the second largest city's first daily news podcast. Once again, the most dedicated show in all of America. Peace.
There we go. Powerful.